Hi, everyone. I hope you're enjoying the event. Now it's time to call on the stage Pam Danziger and Martina Olbert. Hi, how are you today?
Hello.
Good morning.
Very good.
And a good afternoon.
Afternoon, right.
So, Pam Danziger is a market researcher specializing in the affluent consumer and the luxury market. She is founder of Unity Marketing, partner in American Marketing Group Consultancy, author of 8 books, including her latest, Meet the Henrys, The Millennials That Matter Most for Luxury Brands. And she's a senior Forbes.com contributor in the retail and luxury space. Hello, Pam.
Hi. Thank you.
Dr. Martina Olbert is the world's leading authority on the meaning of brands and luxury. She's a brand advisor, social scientist, consumer psychologist, and the founder and CEO of Meaning Global, a global strategy and cultural intelligence consultancy, helping brands reconnect with meaning and human essence to create new value and relevance for their customers in the fast-changing world today. Hello, Martina.
Hello, Anastasia.
So, the stage is yours. See you at the end. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
We really appreciate you having us on the stage today. And if you want to display the slides, you all are in control of our pictures. I mean, the fact is when Martina and I talk together, we range far afield because Martina has got so many great insights and great ideas. So what we did was prepared some slides to kind of guide our discussion, and hopefully we won't go too far afield, but who knows. But if you'd like a copy of our slides, you can simply send an email to either me or Martina, and we'll be glad to share the deck with you. And I'm coming at it from a research perspective. I'm going to talk data, and Martina is going to explain to us what all that data means. And our topic is the Great Luxury Reset and how it's bringing about a new era of conscientious luxury. So if we could have the first slide. We all remember the good old days in luxury because it has been on a steady upward path since 1994 when Bain started doing their study. Steady growth, upward and onward, until there was a minor misstep in 2008, 2009, took a 10% drop. But really everything has been just going gangbusters in the luxury market. And slide 2. And we all know what happened next. It all came crashing down with the pandemic. It wasn't just a setback or a step back. It was a complete reset, just like when we reset our computers and have to start them all over again. It completely changed the priorities of consumers. They were forced to stop their conspicuous consumption lifestyles, had to rest. And during that time, they had a lot of chance to think about their priorities and what they wanted in their life. So that has been a tremendous change, of course. The global market dropped like 20% last year, and Bain is out now with the 2021 projections. They think it may come back. There's a 30% chance it may come back by 2021, but I am much more skeptical. I think we're going to see a much harder road for luxury brands to recover from this tremendous course correction that we discovered. And so I think what we're really going to see is ultimate change. And that's brought about on the next slide by this realignment, this reset of luxury consumers' lifestyles. In 2008 and 2009, and in all previous recessions, the luxury consumers, the affluent consumers, have only had the effects felt in their pocketbook, not in other aspects of their lives. But with the pandemic, there was a threat, of course, to their physical health, their security in the biggest sense of the word. All that time spent at home in seclusion caused them to really look and reassess their lifestyles, what is valuable, what is important in their lives. And that has brought about, tremendous challenges for brands to realign themselves with this new consumer reset. And Martina, will you tell us about the challenges that you see?
Sure. And I really like the fact that you just talked about the challenges, because in it, obviously, it is a great reset, but it's not just a luxury market reset, it's also the human values and needs reset. So it's not as if there was just a luxury crisis in the market. In the crisis, there is an inherent opportunity for luxury brands to align themselves with these new emerging human needs and behaviors and values that probably really weren't there in such a dominant way before the pandemic. So what we actually see with this great luxury reset is that the COVID pandemic has been a great wake-up call to the luxury brands, acting as a catalyst which accelerated their transition to the new luxury paradigm much faster than they would be probably able to do under the normal circumstances before the pandemic. And this is something that you and I really talked about as early as last year in February, and then you published it in one of your articles on what the COVID pandemic really means to the luxury brands as a threat in Forbes. So it came out in Forbes March 2020. Now we're talking about it, and now we are effectively seeing what I was already talking about a year and something before. So I'm really glad that there is this inherent opportunity in the COVID pandemic that luxury brands can now tap into. Can we have the next slide?
And to your point, all these changes in the market we were seeing happening before COVID, but it just really, everybody talks about it. It accelerated the changes. You and I have written extensively about the luxury shift. You published the luxury report back in 2019. Sure. And over the last 5 years, I've been working and doing a survey with executives that work inside luxury brands and luxury companies and companies that support those luxury brands in advertising and marketing. So that's how I've kept my finger on the pulse of the luxury market and what it looks like from an insider's perspective. And both of us, coming from two different vantage points, have seen profound changes coming to the luxury market. The next slide, please. One of the things that I've heard over the last 5 years that I've been studying the market is luxury insiders have talked about the question of luxury losing its meaning. 1/3 of them in the latest survey rated that as a major challenge for luxury brands. And it's either that the term, I'm looking at and saying, well, everybody talks about luxury, and so many brands put on this luxury label on their products and their brands. And so it really ultimately has watered down the meaning. So that's one of the problems. But I also, think because of that, consumers have really lost understanding of what luxury means. So it's really, on the next slide, this question of losing luxury meaning. You can go to the next slide. Thank you. Really, is this the problem? Or is it really just a symptom of the problem? Like when we get a temperature, it's not the temperature that's making us sick, that's a symptom of it. So Martina, can you talk to us about the underlying question of luxury losing its meaning?
Sure. It's exactly as you said, Pam. It really is. Loss of meaning in luxury isn't really the illness per se. It's a symptom of an underlying issue, which is a complete disconnect of luxury brands and the inherent value of luxury and what luxury means to people with the customers, with the culture. Because the meaning is precisely the connective tissue between the two. And if you lose the meaning, the connective tissue between brand values and what people actually value, you essentially lose the meaning of luxury. So it's not as if luxury as a cultural or social concept would lose its meaning. Therefore, luxury market, luxury goods, luxury services would be completely meaningless all of a sudden overnight, right? Like they would lose their value. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the fact that because, and even like because of the COVID pandemic, but even previously before the COVID pandemic, the human values and mindsets and behaviors were changing very rapidly in our, quest coming back to ourselves. We now value fundamentally different things that we valued in the past. So all of these things about like flashiness, opulence, excess, all of these things are not really seen as luxury anymore. And what we are really yearning for are these essential fundamental values. So for luxury as a concept, as a cultural concept, with an inherent value to people, to regain the relevance in people's lives, we really need to understand this fundamental thing that luxury really is all about meaning. It's about the excess of symbolic value over the functional value of the goods and services. So there is this greater significance of what the brand represents in people's minds. It's the richness of its codes and the aura of exclusivity, the craftsmanship, the story, the heritage, the aesthetics, the beauty, all of that really is inherently the value of a luxury brand. So for luxury brands to regain their value, they really cannot look back to their past prominence and legacy and heritage and take the value in people's lives for granted just because they wear luxury brands. They have been luxury brands for 100 or 120 years. They need to figure out how to remediate this inherent value of tradition, luxury, heritage, craftsmanship in a new way to connect better with culture and with people and bring value to people's lives.
As we recognize, and we should, I mean, that there's such, luxury is all about the desires, the wants, the dreams. Luxury is this ideal, and it's really separated from specific human needs. And during the pandemic, I mean, everybody was concerned about the basic fundamental human needs. Do I have enough food in the pantry? Do I have enough toilet paper in the bathroom? Those were the priorities. And again, this whole hard stop for consumers created a situation where they were reassessing what was important to them. And I really think that in many ways, luxury they were really questioning, where does this fit in my lifestyle? Particularly, they didn't want to go out on the street showing off that they have money, and so many other people were suffering in this period. So we saw a rise of what I call and what Martina calls conscientious consumption, which is really getting back to the fundamental human connection. And Martina, you can explain that in more detail.
Sure. So as we saw with the COVID pandemic, people venturing back to themselves and rediscovering what is actually of value and therefore what is luxurious, what is scarce in their lives. We are now seeing a slight shift in the consumption patterns and in consumption behavior. So it's no longer about, like status signaling or putting the excess outwards to make impression on other people. It's really about understanding what we value and what is of personal significance to us. So what we are really seeing with the rise of conscientious consumption and more, conscious behavior when it comes to purchasing and understanding the value of goods and services, we essentially are moving away from conspicuous consumption more towards meaningful and ethical behavior, more towards meaningful consumption, choosing brands and doing things that positively impact our lives. So it's no longer about others. We no longer really care as much about signaling something about ourselves to other people, but rather choosing to consume things that essentially are good for our own well-being and good for ourselves and our own values, and that make us feel more aligned with ourselves. So you could actually say that the whole paradigm of consumption is shifting away from brands and people sort of venturing into these aspirational, illusory worlds where they, are supposed to aspire to the brand's values, not their own values. Moving away from this way of thinking about consumption more towards people and humanity and authentic human values. And therefore, in this new space, what creates brand relevance for luxury brands or for any other brand is connecting with what people value and what their authentic human needs are.
From me and from those of us in the marketing side and the branding side of the business, I mean, the old ways that we used to segment the market based on things like demographics, we put people in different buckets based upon different observable traits. All of those have now gone away, become, basically useless because they just don't work anymore because people don't fit into these arbitrary buckets that we would like to assign them to. Yes, we've got young and mature. I call them mature, not old consumers. But guess what? That isn't necessarily a division anymore. And Martina, you can have some more insights on how the buckets, the labels, just don't work anymore.
Well, they don't work because it's it's fundamentally. I don't want to go as far as being like a conspiracy theorist, but if you look at it from like an ideological point of view, that the reason why it doesn't work is because it's like corporate point of view, sort of objectifying people to fit their own agenda rather than understanding what the brand represents, what the brand's values are, and then finding a meaningful place in people's lives so that the people can connect with the brand authentically, right? So I don't really think that what we should be doing in brand management, marketing, and that's applicable to fashion brands, to luxury brands, or any other brand management, really, it's dividing people and differentiating them and creating new strategies based on how we are different from anybody else and how Gen Z is different from Gen X and how that's different from anybody else, because we will inevitably fragment our audiences into really like tiny little segments that are impossible to target. What is much smarter and actually much more sustainable and long-term way of looking at consumption is not looking at the points of division, but looking at what unites us. And that is precisely why we need to shift our perspective towards these underlying human needs and values that are actually universal.
Right. Absolutely. And, I guess in marketing terms, it's the difference between push marketing, where we throw all the stuff out and all the messages out, versus pull marketing, which is we put breadcrumbs out there and let the people decide, the consumers decide whether they're going to come and align with our brands. I mean, one of the, the cultural differences that we're seeing and the cultural values, and I think this is really becoming very clear specifically with everybody, all the roads in the luxury market seem to lead to China these days. It's particularly clear that there's a very different perspective on what luxury means from the Eastern perspective versus those of us from the West who've been exposed to luxury in a way much, much longer. Can you go back to that slide? Because I know Martina wants to talk about the trouble, and there have been a lot of brands, we're going to talk about Dolce & Gabbana, but there have been a lot of brands that have stumbled because of being culturally insensitive to the values from the East.
Yeah, and it's not just culturally insensitive, Pam. It's also very irrelevant to their own brand and their own brand values and brand essence. So we've said that greater alignment with human values means inevitably greater alignment with culture, and with this greater complexity in diversity of needs, but also of geographies and of markets and all this greater diversity that luxury brands or fashion brands now need to really accommodate come increasingly increasingly dire consequences if you actually misstep and get it wrong. So cultural relevance is really important for luxury brands, obviously, because they need to appeal to much greater diversity of different, cultural backgrounds in markets worldwide. But the way not to do it is by taking the luxury brand or the luxury product and putting it almost literally in the context of another culture and stereotyping the culture around the product, right? This is a very sort of very insensitive, but also very counterproductive way to do it, because you are not really tapping into that richness of the culture that you are trying to appeal to. And it comes across as like very ignorant and sort of superior in a way, which is not what you want to do. You don't want to offend the customers that you are trying to actually allure to your brand, right? That's why I say it's counterproductive. So the way to do it is precisely the opposite, not to pander to the new customers in the different geographies that you're trying to cater to, but more like take the brand and honor the culture that you are going to address with your products and with your values. And this is the perfect example of Sheng Sha, which is an authentic luxury brand that was based on Hermes heritage, and it used the heritage of the luxury brand and all its richness of knowledge and know-how and understanding of what true luxury means, and that basically taking that and then using the Chinese aesthetics to make the brand relevant and appealing aesthetically to the local audiences. So that would be the right example to use here, how to do it.
Great, great. Yeah, and as we tilt toward China, and we know, I mean, China's predicted to be the single biggest market for luxury by the year 2025. As much as we tilt toward China, I worry that we're tilting away from the West and losing that connection with a Western perspective. So I think that China's this great opportunity. China also, I think, really represents a potential challenge for brands. On the next slide, I just dug into the LVMH report, first quarter 2021, and I was amazed to find out that right now China is LVMH's single largest market. 34% of their total revenues now come from China, and that trails by the US with only about 24% of their market share, which is really quite stunning to me, because if we want to go to the next slide, there's so much more money in the United States. I mean, the number of millionaires that live in the US are more. I mean, 20.6 million millionaires live in the United States compared to the 5 next largest countries combined: UK, Japan, France, Germany, and mainland China. So when it comes to luxury brands, I mean, I always advise to follow the money, and the money is in the US market. So we don't want to tilt away from China and ignore where the real money is in the world today. But on the next slide. But regardless where we are in the world, I think that brands need to follow the path of Hermes, which has proven truly successful all over the world by staying true to its luxury roots and its heritage, and not compromising by trying to be popular or trendy. On the other hand, we look at Supreme, and Supreme, is a very successful brand, had a very successful partnership with Louis Vuitton. But now the company is owned by VF, which is definitely a mass market company, which is not attuned to luxury. So I think that following sort of the supreme path is going toward trying to be more trendy, more popular, but ultimately it's more mass and it waters down the message of luxury. And on the next slide, I think that the Mickey Mouse T-shirts is a perfect example of the dangers for luxury brands of trying to be too popular. Now, here are examples of T-shirts, Mickey Mouse T-shirts. You can find one at Walmart for about $6, and you can get one for about $60 if you go to Disney World. And at the very top end, you can find a Mickey Mouse T-shirt by Gucci for $600. Now, I'm not pointing my finger at Gucci because I'm sure that this T-shirt sells very well for them. Otherwise, they wouldn't sell it. But, what is luxury about a Mickey Mouse T-shirt? What justifies that $600 price tag? And, when I look at this, it makes me, I kind of see the evidence of why consumers have lost and become confused about luxury, because the luxury signals and markers are not there. And on the next slide, in one of our discussions, Martina used the word transcendent luxury. And it was like, that was such an eye-opener for me about, wow, that was the word. As a writer, I love words. That was the word that I thought really, really captured my attention. So, Martina, can you explain the concept of transcendent luxury?
Sure. Well, in this context, obviously, you just talked about Mickey Mouse and what really is luxurious about Mickey Mouse. If you can get it for $6, right, at a Walmart, it really makes the point of understanding what makes luxury luxury. In other words, what is the true luxury in the concept of luxury? And what really is luxurious is that it transcends the space and time. It's something that has a timeless value because the value is inherent, right? It's equally about the heritage, the materials, the craftsmanship, the beauty. There's almost like a divinity to true luxury because it stands the test of time. So what I sense in the points that you were just making is that luxury brands, especially fashion brands, are almost at this point of choosing between the two paths going forward. And they need to figure out how to appeal to the young consumers and the new consumer geographies. So we talked about China, right? We talked about cultural relevance. We also mentioned a little bit about Gen Z and new patterns of consumer behavior, of younger consumer audiences. And that's all great. But you cannot really go after profitability without understanding the timelessness and the beauty and the aesthetics and the symbolic richness behind luxury, because you will completely dilute the brand value to the point that you kill what makes the luxury brand luxurious. So what you need to do is to go back in time to retrieve the inherent essence of your luxury brand or of your fashion brand, understand its authentic values, and figure out how to impart that in the world today, obviously, when consumer values and needs have shifted. So this is inherently the idea behind transcendent luxury.
Right. Excellent. Excellent. So now we want to kind of transition to talking about what brands can do to meaningfully tap this change, this shift in culture, talking about branding and marketing and the digital experience and the customer experience and the storytelling that we need to do around our brands. If we want to go to the next slide, one of the things that happened over the last year is that luxury brands have decided that their logos needed to have an update. So, one of the things that they did was they changed all their logos and gave them a refresh. But when we talk about changing the alignment of a brand and aligning it with the values of the consumer, it's so much more than just changing a logo. And ultimately, all these logos now look virtually the same. So again, it's adding more confusion rather than more distinction to the brands as we go forward. In terms of, and Martina, you have some comments on this.
Yeah,
This
no, I wanted to say
logo.
something about this because so the logo refresh and the facelift is something that I actually talked about in the luxury report that I published 2 years ago, where I saw obviously this value shift in consumer behavior and therefore value shift in how the brands look. But what's really unfortunate and why we now are talking about how to meaningfully tap into this shift is that with it seems like the brands really stopped with the meaningful change on the surface level, right? So you can feel this underlying shift in wanting to be closer to the customer, right? Simplifying the naming systems and the visual language. That's why they essentially all look the same. Now we need to figure out how to become a part of people's everyday lives and how to be more essential as a brand without losing its core distinctive visual assets as a brand. So it's great that they are all going in this more simplified, minimal, understated, everyday essential direction, which is very visible from these facelifts. But they need to do that not just on the surface, but more at the core as a business. And this is something that you are actually talking about now, right? With all of these, applying these shifts meaningfully to the core of the business, not just the surface level.
Exactly. On the next slide, I mean, everybody is talking about sustainability and, all about environmental issues and so on. We can go to the next slide. But we've really, and we've heard the term greenwashing, and it's really sustainability is more than just, that we can recycle our products or reselling them in the secondary market or making our jeans, without a lot of water and so on. I mean, we really need to be conscientious luxury brands means that we have to appeal to the human and social needs. We have to think about the economics of our business, and we of course have to think about the environmental too. On the next slide, sustainability is all about responsibility. And we need to be responsible to all of our stakeholders in our business. We need to be responsible first and foremost to our customers, and deliver that true value that is worthy of the price that we are asking our customers to pay. But we also have to be responsible to our employees, make sure that we are paying them a fair wage and rewarding them. We have to be responsible to our management. We have to be responsible to our manufacturers and our manufacturing partners and our retail partners. Also to our investors and to society as a whole. On the next slide, I mean, we really have this great opportunity right now to lead in fashion, in luxury, all aspects of what is a responsible, truly responsible, sustainable luxury brand. And I think we need to get back to, at its core, at its essence, what made luxury great. And that was exceptional quality and exceptional workmanship, exceptional design. And it wasn't just following what's popular and what's trendy. It was really being the leaders. And that was what made luxury great and made for such sustainable, successful businesses over the long haul. On the next slide. And Martina, if you have anything to add, please just jump in.
I was just going to jump in, but I wanted to just add one word, which is vision, right? So you're talking about And that is actually what seems to be completely lost from luxury and fashion today. And I wanted to make this little tiny point about. So I just talked to one of the leading luxury fashion houses in Paris. They asked me to come in to do a small consulting job, essentially asking me about what is happening in the world around them, because they were about to launch their new ready-to-wear collection. And what I could sense immediately is that the conversation and their point of view was very fearful. And it was very much about following exactly what Pam just said not to do. And it seemed as if they were trying to protect themselves from all of these changes in the world and the greater complexity, almost to the point that they were trying to reverse engineer the world to fit back to their own brand agenda, rather than understanding that there are greater opportunities, greater diversity, and therefore far more inspiration to take as a brand to create a fundamentally better value to connect with people in a way that's authentic and meaningful to them around what they value. So I needed to talk to them about the fact that, yeah, it's great. There is a greater complexity, but it doesn't mean that you should be following what everybody else is doing, nor what Gen Z are doing, or what they want, or what they crave, because you will completely lose yourself. That's not your job. Your job as a brand is to have a firm strategy where understanding who you are and your authentic brand values are at the core. And then you pick and choose what's interesting in the world and connect with that to create new opportunities, new platform, new communication, new way for self-expression, new fashion lines, new products, new experiences, because it's a creative play. And then I heard the client say, right, so there is no way to make a mistake. It's not like we are doing it wrong. And I was like, of course not. It's not about right or wrong. It's a play, so go play. Use the world as your playground. Take it as an inspiration. But for the love of God, stop following everyone else, because that's not what people want from you. People want from you to be authentically yourself as a brand and give them a reason to connect with you. That's what it is. So it's for the brands to have the vision to be the leaders again and create the superior value that luxury was always known for. Luxury isn't a game of following, it's a way of leading.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, and to that point, I mean, as a researcher, I always like to go like, let's get the research. And really, ultimately, luxury is a business model. You adapt your brand to fit into the business model, but it's based upon some unchanging pillars of luxury. And the textbook really is the Kempfer and Bastian work, the luxury strategy. If you haven't read it, and it's a tough book to digest, but I really advise everyone pick this up, read it, study it, and see how you can apply the lessons there, the proven time proven lessons of how to adapt this to your business model. And ultimately, and then this is on the next slide, where I think is so exciting about luxury is that creativity is where the success is going to lie. It's the framework, and luxury brands have such a platform, have so much creativity to call upon. We've got to unleash that creativity and make it work for our brands. And on the next page, I just love this statement by Professor Maria Giron. In the luxury universe, the constant challenge is to transform creativity into profitability. And just, I know our time is getting short. We want to just sort of talk specifically about the flight to digital luxury before we close, because this is a fashion tech conference and we can't skip that. I mean, again, one of the amazing things about the change and the reset that we've seen is that personal luxury doubled in terms of market share from 2019 to 2020, and it's now on board to be the leading channel of distribution for luxury purchases by 2020. So that puts a whole lot of new demands on how we sell and how we position our brands. So if Martina, if you just want to sort of close with some thoughts about how we have to adapt to this e-commerce world, this digital world.
Sure, I think it's on the next slide. Can we have the next slide? Right. Okay, so obviously digital is important, as Ben just said. It's the fastest growing channel. But with that, we need to keep in mind that it's still a channel. Digital in itself will not save luxury brands, nor will it save fashion brands. We need to keep in mind that the way to connect with people is around stories, it's around values, it's around meaning, it's around being meaningful and authentic in people's lives. So absolutely use digital as a great channel to get access to people much faster in many more gadgets and channels that you could possibly do, face-to-face or brick and mortar shops. But being mindful of the fact that you still need to create meaningful storytelling that tells a greater story around your brand and allows your customers to authentically connect with your brand and what's behind it.
And on the last slide, we're closing now. What I see is the next challenge, the next dimension for us in terms of the digitization of luxury is we have to program that human dimension into our online platforms and the way we communicate online. And what that means is we got to have our digital technologists working side by side with psychologists and people like Martina who have real insights in how the consumer's minds work. Because we live in an analog world. Consumers dream in analog, and luxury is all about the dreams. So those dreams need to be translated and told in an analog format. And Martina,
Right.
You're going to close?
Yeah, and to do that, to translate those dreams in an analog format, but still be relevant in the many different channels and media and technologies that we use, we simply need to view luxury in context, right? So we talked about the great luxury reset in the market and then the human reset in terms of the values and the needs that people are having right now and where they're going. We talked about moving away from conspicuous consumption more towards conscientious or conscious consumption that is all about the great return to humanity and our own essential needs. So to bridge this gap between brands and people, we still need to keep in mind what it is that people fundamentally value, and that is meaning. And because meaning is so scarce right now, it is effectively becoming the new luxury. So that is our closing point. Meaning is the new luxury. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you too. So I'm just here to say thank you again and thanks for accepting our invitation and see you soon.
Bye-bye.
Okay,
Have a good
see you
day.
soon. Okay, bye.